Before the zombie outbreak, I fled to a remote island in the sea, bringing with me all the supplies my mother left me, and settled down comfortably at home. Yes, I am a mama's girl. All my food, drink, and shelter are provided by my mother. Even with zombies running rampant, I have a mother who can protect me and let me live a laid-back life. Daughter, now, right now, buy some things and go hide on our island. My mom's eerie call made Xiao Yang and me, who were shopping, look at each other in bewilderment. I quickly lowered the volume on my phone and stepped aside. Mom, what are you saying? From the other end of the phone came the sound of noise, and my mom seemed to be quite cautious and lowered her voice. Do you still remember the virus I told you about before? Of course I remember. My mom is a doctoral student in biology and was recruited to work at the National Research Institute of Country L. I also came to Country L to study because of her, and half a year ago, she was suddenly disciplined by the institute and sent home for vacation. After returning home, she was always acting strangely, took out all the savings she had accumulated over the years and the inheritance from my grandparents, and managed to persuade a wealthy businessman to buy a large villa on an island. At first, I thought she wanted to go there to relax during her vacation, but she invested almost all her energy in this villa, almost wanting to build an impregnable fortress. When I went to see it during the holidays, she also bought a yacht, taught me how to drive it hand by hand, and patiently told me the location of the island and where to hide the yacht after arriving at the island. She said that the research institute recently developed a new type of virus, which was originally tested on monkeys and other animals, and the experiments were successful. However, the leaders suddenly insisted on conducting human experiments for some unknown reason. My mom was also disciplined and sent home to rest for a few months because she firmly disagreed with this matter. I didn't ask my mom what the situation was, but seeing her cautious appearance, I also paid more attention to this matter. You must hurry back now. Hide at home, no matter what happens outside, do not come out, lock all doors and windows, and activate the highest level of defense. Mom, what about you? Having depended on each other for many years, I naturally didn't want to only take care of myself. I will come to find you in a few days. Remember, right now. Don't delay. Don't go back to school to ask for leave. Okay, I responded repeatedly. Then what else do I need to bring? No need. I have already bought everything you need. Now you just need to take the things you think are most necessary. Drive to the seaside, leave the mainland by yacht. My mom had already started to be a bit impatient with my nagging, but still worriedly instructed me word by word. Okay, I'll go now. I dared not delay any longer, hurriedly walked towards Xiao Yang not far away. Mom, take care of yourself. I know. My mom decisively hung up the phone, and the noise from the other end of the phone and my mom's voice disappeared together. Yi, what's wrong with Auntie? Xiao Yang waited for me in confusion. What happened? I took a deep breath, tried to suppress my too fast heart rate, and tightly held Xiao Yang's hand. Xiao Yang, it's going to be chaotic. What's chaotic? Xiao Yang looked puzzled. Why does Auntie suddenly let you hide on the island? I looked at the white people coming back and forth in the mall on guard, and gritted my teeth. Xiao Yang, do you have money? Xiao Yang was stunned, subconsciously touched her bag, thinking I was joking with her, and shook her head repeatedly. No, Yi, how much money I have, don't you know? I didn't care about her confusion, just said, send me your bank account. Xiao Yang was stunned. Why? Send it to me, I roared in a low voice. Xiao Yang was scared by me, and finally realized that I was not joking, and quickly handed me the bank card in her bag. Ding! Xiao Yang's phone soon received a transfer. $1 million. Xiao Yang looked at me in shock. Are you crazy? Where did you get so much money? It's my mom's, I can use her card. Why did you transfer it to me? Xiao Yang hurriedly took back the bank card and was about to transfer it back to me. I grabbed her hand and looked at her solemnly. Xiao Yang, something really bad is going to happen. The virus from my mom's biological research institute has leaked, and I have to hide on the island for refuge. Now you hurry up and buy necessities, the more the better. Xiao Yang was scared by me. I didn't dare to stay in the mall any longer, grabbed Xiao Yang's hand and went to the parking lot. Yi. After you go back, don't tell your parents the truth, they may not believe it, just say that I need their help to buy these necessities. Just put them in your house first. I stepped on the accelerator while reminding Xiao Yang. Okay. Xiao Yang nodded in a daze. Is it a very serious virus leak? Well, my mom didn't explain in detail, but it's definitely a major disaster. I nodded, ran several red lights, and safely sent Xiao Yang to the entrance of her community. Remember, let your parents prepare supplies with you, just treat it as a more serious epidemic than COVID. Xiao Yang got out of the car, nodded, and hurriedly took out her phone to call her parents. I breathed a sigh of relief, and then it was time to drive to the seaside. As long as I got on the yacht, it would basically be safe. Yi, this is a watch for you. Xiao Yang threw the watch box in from the car window, showing me a gentle smile. Even if the world is in disaster, our Yi still has a happy birthday. I looked at Xiao Yang turning and running into the community in a daze, and the watch box on the passenger seat lay quietly there. At this moment, a feeling of sorrow suddenly rose in my heart. This farewell, perhaps, is the last time. Although I don't understand what kind of virus my mom has been studying, I believe that if it is not a serious situation, she would not talk about it so seriously and urgently. The city where I am is about 300 kilometers away from where my mom parked the yacht, and the fastest and safest way is to drive there. The road was very calm, so calm that I was a little afraid that my mom was just joking with me, but under the calm, I felt a bit terrifying. I don't understand why the experiments that should have been conducted on animals were suddenly conducted on humans, and I don't understand why my mom was willing to go back to continue studying the virus after being disciplined by the institute. After getting on the highway, I stepped on the accelerator and drove for nearly 3 hours to reach the destination. However, at this time, it was already dark, and there were only a few scattered lights by the dock, and the quiet night was a bit eerie. According to the local rules, the road to the dock is blocked at night, prohibiting entry and exit. I'm not sure if there are carriers of the virus here now, and I dare not disturb anyone. I quickly packed the things on my phone into my bag and put on the watch that Xiao Yang gave me. After getting out of the car, I carefully made my way to the iron gate of the dock, holding a flashlight in my mouth, preparing to climb the gate with my hands and feet. However, as soon as my foot stepped on the iron gate, the old and dilapidated gate made a creaking sound under the pressure. At the same time, the barking of dogs could be heard from a distance, and such a commotion would inevitably attract attention. There was no time for me to slowly climb the gate. I quickly turned around and ran back to the car, made up my mind, started the car again, backed up a bit, and then stepped on the accelerator. The car accelerated towards the iron gate. Boom! The first time it didn't break open, but the iron gate was already on the verge of collapsing. I backed up again and stepped on the accelerator. Boom! The second time, the iron gate still didn't fall, and the front of the car began to deform. The barking of dogs was getting closer, and I backed up again, and a yellow Labrador jumped onto the back glass of my car. I was startled and quickly shifted gears and stepped on the accelerator. This time, the iron gate could no longer stop me, and it was knocked open after a strong impact. The shouts of the locals had already come from behind the car. I drove the car all the way to the side of my family's yacht, got out of the car with my bag, went directly to untie the yacht's rope, and started the engine of the yacht. The guard at the dock was already running towards me. I didn't have time to wait for the yacht's engine to warm up before starting, so I started the fire and turned the direction of the yacht towards the sea. Wang wang! Wang wang wang! The first to catch up was, of course, the dog. The leading German shepherd didn't know where it came from with courage, and when my yacht was already 5 or 6 meters away from the shore, it jumped up and directly pounced onto the deck. The rest of the dogs did not have such courage to pounce over, but only stood on the shore and barked at me frantically. The combat power of the German shepherd is not to be underestimated. I didn't dare to underestimate it, and after stabilizing the direction of the yacht, I picked up a fire axe nearby. However, it did not run towards the cabin, but kept barking at the passage on the lower deck of the deck. I was puzzled, and under the dim light of the yacht, I saw a figure slowly coming up the stairs of the lower deck of the deck. How could someone else be hiding in my mother's yacht? The German shepherd barked more urgently, and its steps unconsciously retreated 2 steps. The figure, as thin as a skeleton, slowly appeared in the light of the yacht, and I finally saw what kind of monster it was. There was almost no flesh on the black and yellow face, and the wrinkled skin seemed to be tightly attached to the skull, highlighting the high cheekbones and forehead, and flies were still on the deep eye sockets. His right hand was also only the upper arm, dragging a long torn sleeve, with unknown black mucus stuck on it. This can no longer be considered a person. I took a deep breath and slowly squatted down with the axe in my hand. I might have the courage to fight against the German Shepherd, but facing this unknown creature, fear arose. Roar! The person roared and rushed towards the German Shepherd. The German Shepherd yelped and turned to run around the deck. The German Shepherd was agile, and the person couldn't catch it for a while. I also saw the appearance of the person clearly, and there were two black rotten things in the deep eye sockets. It looked very much like a zombie. I recalled my mother's recent mumbling, and my heart sank more and more. Boom! Ayo ayo ayo! After a loud noise, the voice of the German Shepherd's cry came, and soon they circled to this side of the deck. The German Shepherd's hind leg may have been hit, and it was running back with its leg curled, and the zombie-like thing was pushing the German Shepherd to the edge of the deck step by step. I couldn't wait any longer. Once the zombie infected the German Shepherd or drove it off the yacht, the next one to suffer would be me. I took a deep breath and quietly walked to the door. The German Shepherd seemed to notice my movement, barked at me a few times, and then kept barking at the zombie, as if full of courage again. The increasingly urgent barking of the German Shepherd made the zombie more irritable, and it roared and pounced towards the German Shepherd. I seized the opportunity and broke out of the door with an axe in my hand when the zombie passed by the door. The glass on the door was suddenly smashed, and the glass fragments splashed, some of which scratched my face and arms, and some hit my body. But I didn't care about these, staring at the zombie that was hit on the head by me with an axe, fell to the ground but was still struggling. The German Shepherd was no longer barking, limping to my side, and barked at the zombie a few more times. Looking at the zombie who was still struggling to stand up, my heart was full of fear, but I still took the axe and went forward, smashing the zombie's head hard again and again. There was no blood splashing out, only black liquid slowly flowing out of the skull. Until the zombie was completely still, I slowly lost strength and fell to the ground. The yacht was still slowly moving forward, and we were far from the shore. The salty sea breeze was full of the stench of decay. I looked at the injured German Shepherd, and it hummed twice, lying quietly in the corner. I couldn't bring the zombie body back to the island. I found a hook in the warehouse under the deck, hooked the zombie body with the hook, dragged it to the edge of the deck, and then kicked hard, throwing it down with the hook. There was a black liquid left on the deck, and I found a water gun to wash away the dirty things on the deck. After doing all this, I went back to the cabin and drove towards the island according to the positioning my mother told me. After about 2 hours, I saw the island. It can almost be considered a deserted island, with no other standing place around except for the reefs. I carefully drove the yacht to find the hidden water cave my mother talked about. The entrance of this water cave is not big, but the inside is not small, and there are unknown vine-like plants hanging outside the entrance, and I don't know how my mother found it. I simply brought some supplies from the yacht, held a flashlight in my mouth, carried my backpack on my back, and prepared to climb out on the uneven stones on the side. Wang! The German Shepherd suddenly barked at me, looking at me pitifully. In order to prevent someone from stealing the yacht, my mother deliberately didn't build a walkable road here. Wanting to go out or come in from the entrance, you must climb carefully. Dogs, of course, they can't get out. I took a look at this cave. There is no food, no fresh water, and the dog can't live for long. Wang! It barked at me again. Shut up. I was afraid that its barking would attract the attention of other people on the island, exposing the position of the yacht. Wait for me to come back. I scrambled out of the water cave, using my hands and feet. Fortunately, the island has not been fully developed yet, and only a few scattered households live on it. My arrival did not attract anyone's attention. I walked to a slightly flatter place, dumped everything from my bag on the ground, put on the empty bag again, and crawled back into the water cave. Wang wang! Shut up! The German Shepherd was indeed still waiting for me on the deck, wagging its tail excitedly. I grabbed and stepped on the protruding rocks, carefully climbing next to the deck. Do not bite me. I have been vaccinated against rabies. I pointed at the German Shepherd, pretending to be fierce. The German Shepherd grunted twice and turned around on the deck by itself. I found the right angle and jumped onto the deck, pulling the empty bag behind me. If you want to go with me, come in, I will carry you out. If you don't want to go with me, I won't care about you. When the virus fully erupts, this island may not be absolutely safe, and I don't want to run out every day to feed a dog. The German Shepherd tilted its head to look at me, standing at a distance, seemingly not understanding my meaning. I pointed to the empty backpack and then to the outside. Get in, I will take you out. The German Shepherd still stood motionless, even barking at me. Ungrateful little thing, I muttered, getting up to grab the German Shepherd, but even with a lame leg, it was still agile and dodged. Are you sure? If you don't go with me, I won't care about you anymore. I didn't want to waste time with a dog, grabbing the backpack and ready to leave. Wang wang, the German Shepherd barked at me again. I sighed helplessly and took out a ham sausage from the yacht. Under my repeated temptation, the German Shepherd was finally defeated by the lure of the ham sausage and walked towards me step by step. When I was a child, I watched my grandparents catch cats and dogs, and I grabbed the back of the German Shepherd's neck and stuffed it directly into the backpack. Unexpectedly, the German Shepherd was wholeheartedly eating the ham sausage, without any struggle, allowing me to stuff it into the backpack. The backpack was not big, only half of the German Shepherd's body could be stuffed in, and the upper body was still lying outside the backpack. I carried the German Shepherd on my back with difficulty, placing its 2 front legs on my shoulders. Don't move, if you fall off, I can't swim. The German Shepherd finished eating the ham sausage and seemed to understand what I said, just looking around without any other actions. I stepped out of the water cave step by step along the way I came. As soon as my feet touched the flat ground, the German Shepherd on my back jumped up, limping and looking around. I packed the things on the ground again, glanced at the German Shepherd that had started to wander around, and turned to walk towards my mom's villa. Ding ding ding. My phone suddenly rang. It was Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang, what's wrong? I picked up the phone and heard Xiao Yang's sobbing and noise on the other side. Yee, zombies, there are zombies everywhere. I sighed. The speed of the virus outbreak in the city was really beyond my imagination. I also encountered 1-inch. Are you okay? Xiao Yang hurriedly cared about me. Did you get bitten? I saw those people get bitten and then. I'm fine, you should not go out from now on. Stay at home with your parents and wait for rescue. Okay, Xiao Yang sobbed softly. You also be careful. Okay, I won't talk to you for now. I'm still on the road. I'll talk later when I get back. I held the phone and flashlight in one hand and pulled the surrounding plants with the other. Okay, Xiao Yang reluctantly agreed. Be careful. Remember to mute your phone, try not to make noise. These zombies are sensitive to sound, but their eyes are rotten. If you have to confront them, hit their heads, other vital points are useless. Okay, I remember, Xiao Yang hurriedly agreed. I hung up the phone, looked back, and saw that the German Shepherd had followed up, chasing me with some vigilance and dependence. After walking for about half an hour, I finally found my mom's villa. My mom is indeed my mom. This villa is located on the hillside, with almost no clear roads up and down, which can greatly hinder the steps of zombies and people. There is also a high wall around the villa, and the wall is equipped with an electric grid. To enter the wall, you must first use the key that only my mom and I have to open the gate. After entering the wall, you must use my mom and my facial recognition to enter the villa. I was about to close the gate of the wall when the German Shepherd stood a few meters away from the door, looking at me eagerly, and the originally raised tail also drooped down. I hesitated for a moment and still let it into the yard. As an island suitable for human habitation, there is of course an independent freshwater device and power system, but my mom, just in case, installed many solar panels in the yard and on the roof. In this way, even if the power system on the island cannot be used in the future, it can also ensure the basic electricity in my home. According to my mom's instructions, I started the highest defense mode of the whole house after entering the door. Although I don't know what the highest defense is, what I can see is that the electric grid on the wall is powered and all the doors and windows in the house are closed. After a little tidying up, I took out some medicine for bruises and sprains, bandages, and splints from the medicine box. The German Shepherd was quietly curled up in the corner, only looking at me listlessly when hearing the movement. I directly took out a few ham sausages and threw them in front of it, and when it was eager to eat, I pulled out its injured leg. I am not a doctor, only knowing some basic nursing, simply touching its leg that was a bit twisted. At that time on the yacht, I didn't know how it was dealing with the zombie, and I didn't know how it was injured, but fortunately, the zombie didn't grab it, and there was no external injury on its body, otherwise, I would be afraid that it would mutate. I first rubbed it with some medicine for bruises and sprains, and it barked at me a few times, then used a splint and bandage for a simple fixation. I am not sure if this leg can be cured, it can only rely on itself. I also took out a bowl of water and a bowl of chicken breast from the house and put it in front of it. When my mom built the villa, she should not have thought that there would be a dog in the house, so there is no dog food or anything in the house. After dealing with the German Shepherd's injury, I took a bath at home and was thinking about what to eat when my mom suddenly called. "Daughter, have you arrived home?" "I'm here, Mom, how about you?" "I'm temporarily safe here, I'll come to you in a couple of days, you stay at home well, don't open the door for anyone." "Okay, I know." Sizzle. Perhaps the signal on my mom's end wasn't very strong, the intermittent static made it impossible for me to hear what she said afterwards, only vaguely mentioning something about the basement. The idea of adding a basement was mine. I thought that an extra basement could store a lot of miscellaneous items, but my mom seemed to have a different idea. The entrance to the basement is hidden behind the large wardrobe in my mom's room. I tidied up my room a bit and then went to check out the basement. If it weren't for the apocalypse, I would suspect that my mom wanted to open a supermarket on the island. The entire basement, covering an area of over 200 square meters, is filled with all kinds of supplies, food, drinks, household items, and clothing. Almost all the daily necessities are prepared. According to my mom's idea, the supplies in the basement should not be touched unless absolutely necessary, as there are also plenty of supplies in the villa above ground. On the first day of the zombie outbreak, the government of Country L still tried to cover up the situation, claiming it was a terrorist attack, and even tried to shift the blame to Country S. I opened my phone, and the hot search was full of news discussing this matter. "Yee, are you not at school?" My roommate Aisha sent me a WeChat message. "The school is counting the number of people, where are you? Should we report for you?" I hesitated for a moment, but still chose to reply, "Aisha, don't worry about me, I am very safe at home, it's very chaotic outside, you must not go out, you can use the things I left in the dormitory if you need them." Not long after I sent it, Aisha replied, "It's okay, as long as you are safe, you should be more careful outside." Aisha and Raleigh are my roommates, both are from Country L. I don't usually hang out with them, but our relationship is quite good now. I don't know if they can hold on until the rescue. Further back in the messages, there were teachers asking why I was absent from today's morning class in this situation. I don't need to explain anymore. I put down my phone and looked out the window. It was as quiet and peaceful as always for now. This isolated island is still very safe. After a night of tossing and turning, I was so sleepy that tears were streaming down my face, and I fell asleep as soon as my head touched the pillow. "Daughter, be careful." My mom's frightened shout came from my ear, and I hurriedly turned back to see a zombie that had already mutated standing less than 3 meters away from me. My mom's scream was like a switch, and the zombie rushed at me like crazy. The dark eyes stared straight at me, scaring me back a few steps. Bang! I watched as the zombie stopped in front of me, black liquid slowly flowing out of the wound, and then collapsed to the ground. "Mom!" My mom rushed up and slapped me. "Didn't I tell you, you are not allowed to tell anyone about this place?" I looked at my mom in a daze, not knowing when I had exposed the location of my home, and turned to look at the zombie. I don't know when, the zombie had become the appearance of Xiao Yang's father. Xiao Yang?" I asked my mom in a trembling voice. Yi Xiao Yang walked out from behind my mom, tears all over her face, gently sobbing, my dad." I turned to look at my mom, only to see her staring at me with disappointment, turned around with her gun and left. I and Xiao Yang hurriedly chased after her, afraid to be too far away from my mom. I originally wanted to comfort Xiao Yang a few more words, but when I turned my head, I found that Xiao Yang had disappeared. "Xiao Yang!" I shouted quickly, and when I turned back, my mom was about to disappear around the corner. "Mom!" The disappeared Xiao Yang and the mom who was about to disappear. I hesitated for a moment, and then ran towards my mom. "Mom! Xiao Yang is not." As soon as I turned the corner, I saw my mom being knocked to the ground by Xiao Yang's mother. Her neck was bitten and scarred. Mom. Suddenly opened my eyes. What I saw was the crystal chandelier on the ceiling. I was even a bit confused for a moment where I was. My heart was beating so fast that it was about to jump out. Hollow, confused, silent. In that moment, these feelings surged into my heart. I hurriedly stood up and looked out of the window, the lush green mountains and the blue sea, silent as if isolated from the world. No, it is indeed isolated from the world. In this moment, I suddenly realized the arrival of the apocalypse, and as a survivor, loneliness is inevitable. My stomach growled twice. I wore a simple nightgown and went downstairs, made a simple sandwich in the kitchen, and made a cup of soy milk. The German shepherd in the yard was still lying quietly in the corner, not making a sound or running around. Come here. I opened the door and waved to it. The German shepherd hurriedly ran towards me with that leg, humming and rubbing against my trouser legs. I looked at the bowl that had been eaten clean, and then found a piece of cooked steak from the kitchen and added it to its bowl, adding some water. Ayo. Shut up. I scolded in a low voice, slapping it on the forehead. Don't bark. If you bark again, get out. The German shepherd seemed to understand what I meant, hummed in grievance, and lay down beside my feet, licking my trouser legs ingratiatingly. It's dirty. I stepped away from the German shepherd's touch because of the battle with the zombies. The German shepherd was covered in a foul smell, and I don't know what dirty things it had rubbed against. After enduring for a while, I gritted my teeth, found a rope from the house, tied the German shepherd and pulled it into the villa. The paws of the German shepherd also didn't know what they stepped on, leaving a series of bright black footprints on the floor. I resignedly took out a large basin, filled it with warm water, and looked at the German shepherd tied in the corner. Stinky, come and take a bath. The German shepherd hummed and retreated 2 steps, looking reluctant to touch the water. There was no way. I could only put on a simple apron, directly grab it and throw it into the basin, squeezed my shower gel and washed it several times with water, then wiped it with a dry towel, and let it go to the yard to bask in the sun. Perhaps because the food at the dock was not very good, the fur of the German shepherd was not bright, and there were several old scars, and it was wearing a heavy iron collar around its neck. However, it is at least very fortunate to have met me. After all, the dock is now unknown what it looks like. On the second day of the zombie outbreak, I used the telescope my mother left to observe the general situation of the entire island. There are about 10 villas on the island, scattered in different directions, but only about 5 or 6 families actually live on the island. The closest house to me is occupied by a man from Country Y, who is currently on vacation and enjoying a romantic getaway with his mistress. Next is an elderly couple, the husband of which, according to my mother, was once a business tycoon in Country X. In recent years, he has handed over his business to his son and is now living a peaceful life on the island with his wife. I am not very familiar with the other families, and they live on the other side of the island, which is a bit far from my house, so I don't have to worry for the time being. On the internet, there are more and more videos and discussions about people being chased by zombies, and even some people are live streaming the appearance of zombies amidst the panic. More and more states are falling to the zombie attacks. Many people are trying to escape the besieged cities, and the prices of plane tickets, boat tickets, and train tickets have skyrocketed. Some people are crying and begging for a ticket to leave Country L, even willing to go bankrupt for it. And the government, it's still as ineffective as ever, with high-ranking officials constantly denouncing terrorism and cursing the sinister intentions of Country S in front of the media. Inside Country S, I saw my international student friends complaining in their social media circles due to the outbreak of the zombie virus in Country L. Coupled with the government's lax control, the virus has leaked, and now there are quite a few zombies in Country S as well, causing widespread complaints. If it weren't for the current global human survival issue of the zombie problem, I guess the 2 countries could have gone to war. The state where my school is located is now in chaos, with all businesses and industries collapsing, and zombies wandering the streets, while survivors are hiding at home. Outside the window, the man from Country Y is still sunbathing on the beach, while the woman in a bikini is grilling fish she just caught from the sea. They seem to be unaware of what has happened to the outside world. Xiao Yang called me again, and she had dark circles under her eyes. She was hiding in the blanket, crying softly, and telling me about the terrifying situation outside. Xiao Yang, don't be afraid, I sighed gently. As long as you stay at home and don't go out, You should be able to wait for the rescue. Have you spent the money I transferred to you? Xiao Yang shook her head. I haven't finished spending it. My dad and I were buying things when we encountered zombies, and we quickly got in the car and ran away. I frowned. How much did you buy? How long will it last? Xiao Yang blinked blankly. I don't know, my parents bought it. Sometimes Xiao Yang is like a living idiot, and she really can't be relied upon. Is there anything else your family needs? Xiao Yang paused and still shook her head. Is there enough water? I'm worried that the water supply might be cut off later. I had to ask her directly. And electricity, it's also likely to be cut off later. Xiao Yang looked at me blankly. Water, Dad bought a lot of barrels, but electricity. I sighed. The time my mother left me was indeed short, and it was not enough for Xiao Yang's family to install solar panels. Anyway, try not to go out. It's too dangerous outside. You'll have to make do at home, and it will be okay when the virus is over. I had no other way. I could only try to comfort Xiao Yang. After hanging up the phone with Xiao Yang, I was thinking about whether to clear the flowers and plants in the yard and plant some fast-growing vegetables when there was a knock on the door. Wang! Before I could react, the German Shepherd stood up smartly and barked at the door. Shut up! I quickly scolded, pulling the German Shepherd by the back of its neck and dragging it into the villa. The sound insulation of the villa is very good. Even if the German Shepherd barks at home, it's not very clear outside. I decisively locked the German Shepherd in the utility room, and then looked at the situation outside through the videophone at the door. It was the hostess from Country X. She was standing outside the door with a cane, holding a plate of freshly made pasta. Pasta is one of my mother's favorite foods, and I have heard my mother say that this old lady's pasta is very delicious. The old lady must have thought my mother was here and specially brought the pasta. I hesitated for a while, but decided not to open the door. After waiting for a while and seeing that no one came to open the door, the old lady had to go back step by step with her cane. I ran upstairs to look outside and saw the old lady passing by the door of the people from Country Y, and the lover seemed to be mocking the old lady. But after a few words, the old man came over with his shotgun, glared at the lover, and helped the old lady walk back. I sighed gently and stopped paying attention to them. On the third day of the zombie outbreak, the government's lies were shattered under the overwhelming videos on the internet, and this time even the high-ranking officials who were trying to stabilize people's hearts on the media were gone, and everyone was running out in panic. This also led to the rapid spread of the zombie virus in other countries besides Country L. More and more areas are falling. Such news, even if it is isolated from the world, should be known. The man from Country Y and his lover have not been running out these 2 days, and the elderly couple from Country X are even more closed. The elderly couple from Country X have been living on this island for a long time. As far as I know, they have planted some vegetables in their yard, and they usually dry some seafood, so they should not be troubled by supplies for a while. I was thinking about when to contact my mother and ask if she wants to help this old couple, but when I was alone, I would never dare to open the door easily. However, before I could wait for my mother's call, the accident happened. Since the last time the old lady from Country X came with the pasta, and the German Shepherd barked, I suddenly realized that I couldn't keep this dog thing in the yard anymore. If it barks a few more times, I guess everyone on the island will know that there are people and dogs in my house. If there are zombies on the island, it will probably attract zombies. So I decided to keep the German Shepherd inside the villa. When my mother built this villa, she took sound insulation as the first priority, so she just locked the German Shepherd in any room, and there was no sound outside the yard. Fortunately, this German Shepherd doesn't bark often. Today, I was training the dog to exercise on the treadmill when I suddenly noticed the man from Country Y, who had closed the doors and windows, ran to the door of the elderly couple from Country X, and even brought his little lover. I quickly found my mother's telescope and looked over there. I watched as the mistress appeared weak and frail, holding her stomach and leaning against a tree. The man from Country Y knocked on the door of the elderly couple's home. They seemed to have a conversation through the videophone at the door. For a while I saw the old man holding his shotgun step out, throw a bag of something by the door, and then retreated to a safe area before using a smart device to open the gate of his yard. After the gate opened, the man from Country Y immediately saw the bag by the door, but he seemed not to be satisfied with it, looking around the old man's yard. In the end, I don't know how the old man negotiated with the man from Country Y, but after a few back and forths, the man from Country Y left with the bag and his mistress. But I feel that this matter is far from over. Although the man from Country Y did not come to my house, his behavior still made me feel extremely unsafe at this moment. I really hope my mother can appear in front of me as soon as possible. On the 5th day of the zombie outbreak, countries around the world have more or less fallen areas, and the virus is ravaging the earth. Xiao Yang calls me every day, crying so hard each time that she is exhausted and falls asleep. But all I can do is comfort her. Xiao Yang told me that recently many people have tried to go out to find food, but none have returned safely. If her family didn't have the things I told them to buy, they would probably be in trouble by now. The ordinary families in Xiao Yang's community are running out of food, so the supplies on the island should be running out too. The man from Country Y is not used to storing food, and since he is just here for a vacation, his food is the first to run out. Even if the old man gave him a bag of something, it should not last long. Since guessing the behavior of the man from Country Y, I dare not sleep soundly at night, getting up at the slightest movement, and later even dragging the German Shepherd to sleep in my room. It rained heavily that night, which is not very common on the island. The sound of the rain hitting the leaves made a rustling sound, covering up some unknown sounds. I was just dozing off when I heard the usually quiet and sensible German Shepherd suddenly stand up, and the sound of its paws hitting the floor woke me up instantly. The German Shepherd stood by the window and looked outside, staring at a certain place. I quickly got out of bed, put on my shoes, and walked to its side. The rain was heavy, and I couldn't hear any strange sounds, but I believe the dog's ears must be more sensitive than mine. I simply sat next to the German Shepherd, holding my doll, trying to stay awake. After about 10 minutes or so, I still couldn't see anything from the dark night. At most I saw the lights on at the old couple's house from Country X. Then, there was a sudden urgent knock on the door. At that moment, my heart was instantly lifted. At the same time, the German Shepherd was about to bark, but I quickly stopped its mouth and dragged it into the utility room. I hurried downstairs in my slippers and ran to the video phone. The knocker was still the old lady from Country X. At this moment, she was covered in mud and rain, and her cane was nowhere to be found. She was shivering, looking back while pressing the doorbell. Did she encounter a zombie? Or was she robbed? I didn't dare to act rashly. First, I was afraid that the zombie virus had also appeared on the island, and if I let the old lady in, she might mutate in front of me. Second, I was afraid of getting into trouble. I haven't turned on the lights at home these days, afraid that people would find out that there are people at home, although it was still because the German Shepherd was discovered by the old lady. My combat power is too low, and I can't afford any accidents. I didn't dare to stand by the door, and I came to the monitoring room. My mother, who was prescient, naturally prepared such a safe room, and there were monitors. There are more than 10 monitors for this entire villa, plus inside and outside the yard. I skillfully found the 2 monitors outside the yard. One is facing the yard gate, which can see the direction of the videophone, and the other is facing the distance outside the yard gate. The old lady was still standing at the door, speaking in the language of Country X, which I couldn't understand, seemingly fearful and cursing. Just as my conscience was being tormented, the old lady seemed to suddenly see something terrible, gave up knocking on the door, and ran away. I was puzzled, and in the rainy night, a man in a hoodie appeared vaguely. It was the man from Country Y. The hoodie was on his head, and he was holding a short knife in his hand, immersed in the darkness of the night. Perhaps he was wondering why the old lady came to knock on the door. He took a look at the videophone by the door. Because I didn't open the authority, he didn't see anything. But his glance still made me feel deeply afraid. Fortunately, he didn't stay long, and soon turned and disappeared into the rain. I was scared, I was afraid. I didn't dare to think about where the old man, who had always been in love with the old lady, had gone, and I didn't know whose blood the knife of the man from Country Y was stained with or about to be stained with. That night, I sat in the monitoring room, staring at every picture in the monitor, holding a fruit knife tightly in my hand. Until the dawn, the dark clouds retreated, and the rain stopped. The air was filled with the salty smell of the damp sea breeze. There was no movement all night, which made me a bit bold and climbed to the 2nd floor, using the telescope to look in the direction of the villa of the old couple from Country X. The rain seemed to have washed away all the sins. If I hadn't stayed up all night, I might have doubted that last night's events were just a nightmare of mine. There were no traces on the road, as calm as usual. Not long after, I saw the mistress come out of the villa of the man from Country Y, and she walked all the way to the villa of the old couple from Country X to knock on the door. I didn't see this mistress last night, and I don't understand why she is knocking on the door of the old couple from Country X at this moment. However, my doubts were quickly resolved. The one who opened the door was not the old lady and the old man from Country X, but the man from Country Y. After he opened the door, he acted as if he was at home, rubbing his messy hair from sleep, and went to the yard to wash with cold water. The mistress seemed to say something to him, and the two of them entered the house affectionately. From beginning to end, I didn't see the figures of the old couple from Country X. I had a faint answer in my heart, an answer that made me extremely scared. I didn't expect that the zombie virus didn't ravage the island, but people first had the intention to kill. Buzz. My phone suddenly vibrated gently. I quickly picked up the phone and answered. Yi. It's over, Xiao Yang cried on the other end of the phone for the first time without lowering her voice. My heart sank again. What's wrong? Our family's food was discovered by the neighbor. He threatened us that if we don't give him food, he will expose us in the owners group, so that everyone will come to rob our food. Xiao Yang cried so hard that she was out of breath, but she still explained to me clearly. Did you give it to him? I asked hurriedly. There is almost no food left. Yes, the man from Country Y, who is trapped on the island, should also be trying to seize the food of the old couple from Country X, so Xiao Yang will naturally encounter such people and things. I just regret that I didn't explain it to Xiao Yang at the beginning. We gave it. Xiao Yang sobbed softly. My dad said, according to this trend, the government will not be able to rescue for a while. Water, electricity, and the internet will be cut off soon. As long as we hold on until the power and the internet are cut off, his threat is not to be feared. I breathed a sigh of relief. That's good, this is the best way for Uncle right now. Okay, I know. Hide things well, don't open the door easily, and when necessary, you can take extraordinary measures. I'm afraid that Xiao Yang will be soft-hearted for a moment and save someone she shouldn't save. Xiao Yang responded softly, as if she wanted to say something. Xiao Yang, do you want to say something? Yi. Xiao Yang's voice sounded very embarrassed. My parents want to ask if our family can take shelter at your place. I can't remember how I hung up the phone. It seems that I quickly hung up as soon as Xiao Yang asked that question, or maybe it was the crackling sound of the current that made her unable to hear my voice and she hung up. All I know is that when Xiao Yang asked that question, a chill and alertness suddenly rose in my heart. The eerie dream I had and the figure of the man from Country Y last night left a deep shadow on me. I am very clear that based on my relationship with Xiao Yang, I should not react like this. This villa can be said to be a painstaking effort by my mother. She has told me many times that if there is really a day when the virus leaks, I must not bring anyone here. Xiao Yang's proposal made me very difficult. I admit that I am selfish, timid, and afraid to die. I am afraid that Xiao Yang's family will bring the zombie virus, and I am also afraid that Xiao Yang's family will have the idea of occupying the magpie's nest if they live in the villa for a long time. I am really scared. But I also despise such a self. Xiao Yang and I have been good friends for 5 years at that time. When I first came to Country L, I still had a strong accent and didn't like to interact with people. I usually only talked with people from my own country, and everyone didn't accept me as a new student very quickly. Only Xiao Yang would speak to me gently, tell me some things about the school, and help me correct my accent and improve my grades. I should not abandon her for fear. But I did it. And now I have rejected her proposal. She must be very sad now, and may even be angry, thinking that I am stingy and not righteous. I dare not think more, took out the satellite phone my mother left for me from the cabinet and dialed my mother's satellite phone. I waited for a long time, so long that I thought no one would answer, and the satellite phone was answered. Mom. What's the matter? My mother's familiar voice and tone came through the satellite phone. I hurriedly held back my tears and laughed. Nothing. When can you arrive? About 3 to 5 days. Why is it so long? Normally, the distance from my mother to here is not very far, and it should not take so long to arrive. Well, I have to do something. You wait for me at home, and don't open the door for anyone except me. I paused for a moment and nodded heavily. "Mom, don't worry, I'm fine, and it's very safe at home." My mother seemed to snort coldly on the other end, muttered something gently, and then impatiently wanted to hang up the phone. "I'm not talking to you anymore, I still have zombies here." As soon as the words fell, the phone was hung up. Listening to the cold, busy tone on the phone, my heart was a little relieved. Although my mother is not often by my side, every time I finish a phone call with her, I can be more at ease, and it has always been like this since I was a child. After confirming the time my mother will arrive, my heart that was hanging up was finally slightly relieved. In the next 2 days, the man from Country Y and his mistress did not take any other actions, but I occasionally saw them pointing in the direction of my house. Seemingly, if nothing unexpected happens, their next target is me. I, who has no combat power, only hope that my mother can arrive one day earlier. At the same time, in order to prevent the German Shepherd from barking at the wrong time, I have been training it these 2 days. If it weren't for the fact that throwing it out at this moment would attract the attention of the man from Country Y, I really want to throw it out. The first time I saw the effect was when a helicopter suddenly came to the island. The German Shepherd, who heard the movement before me, rushed to my side while I was cooking, humming and looking very anxious. Before I could react, I heard the sound of a helicopter coming from above. I quickly put down the things in my hand and ran upstairs. The helicopter steadily passed over the roof and trees and stopped at the small helipad at the highest point of the island. My alertness was raised again. I don't think this helicopter is here for rescue. After all, there are not many people on this island, and even fewer people know about this island. The rescue from the government of Country L is absolutely impossible to come so quickly. So, there is only one possibility. Someone has come to this island to take refuge. I observed for a while, and after the helicopter stopped, a group of people protected by mercenaries did get off, and then hurriedly disappeared on the path in the forest of the helipad with large bags and small bags. Of course, I am not the only one who noticed this change, as well as the man from Country Y and his mistress. I clearly saw that the man from Country Y and his lover seemed to have had an argument, pointing at the helicopter on the island from time to time, and the focus of the argument should be these new arrivals. If their focus is thus transferred to those new people, it would be good news for me. Unfortunately, it is the norm that things do not go as one wishes. They still set their sights on my house. A sharp scream pierced the sky, breaking the peace of this place. Before I could react and run upstairs to check, the video phone at the door rang, accompanied by an urgent knock on the door. The German Shepherd, who was lying obediently at my feet, suddenly stood up. I quickly made a silent gesture to the German Shepherd. I walked lightly to the videophone, and on the display of the videophone, the mistress of the man from Country Y was crying with tears streaming down her face, knocking on the door, and looking eagerly at the videophone. Her clothes were messy. Perhaps, she thought there was a man living in my house. I didn't say a word, only hearing her crying continuously on the other end of the videophone, "Help, save me, please." Her words were mixed with English and a language I couldn't understand, but I got the key points. She said that she was imprisoned on the island by the man from Country Y, cut off from the world recently. She found out she was pregnant, but the man abused her. She took the opportunity when he was asleep to run out today, hoping I would take her in. How could I believe her words? For all I know, the man from Country Y might be hiding somewhere, waiting to pounce as soon as I open the door, or planning to cooperate with him after she gets in. The precedent of the elderly couple from Country X is still there, and I haven't seen them yet. How could I let her in? The mistress cried for a long time by herself. Seeing that there was still no movement in the house, she gradually stopped sobbing, looked at the videophone in doubt and anger, and turned away from the camera's view. I hurriedly ran into the monitoring room to observe their movements more comprehensively. However, to my surprise, the mistress did not go back to the man from Country Y, but circled around my yard, trying to climb over the wall. This scene startled me. Just as her hand touched the top of the wall. Crackling. I could clearly see the electric current jumping. The woman didn't react in time and screamed, falling down. Yes, my mother installed an electric fence. At this moment, I am extremely grateful for my mother's caution and foresight. The mistress lying on the ground took a long time to slowly get up, glared resentfully at the electric fence on the wall, and limped away. If it doesn't work once, There will definitely be a second time. In order to protect my safe house, I prepared some things. Such as a gun. Country L does not ban guns if you have power, money, and connections. There is nothing you can't get your hands on. My mother also spent a lot of effort to get it. My shooting is not accurate, but at least I can fire, which can have a certain deterrent effect. Now, just waiting for the man from country Y to appear. The German Shepherd is still very obediently guarding by my side, not making any sound easily. The only not so good thing is that it eats more than me every day. I can only comfort myself that having a dog can often detect danger earlier than me. The man from country Y chose a dark night to attack my house. The German Shepherd played the role I kept it for, humming and alerting me early that someone was coming this way. I didn't care about washing, and went straight to the third floor with a gun and bullets. This time, the man from country Y seemed to be very cautious, circling around for a while, and then left his mistress not far away to observe for him. At first, he tried to pry open the yard door, and after a long time of struggling, he could only kick the door angrily. I have to say, the security level of this door is really high. If he can't get in from the door, he can only climb over the wall. The man from country Y didn't know where to move a ladder, trying to climb in without touching the electric fence, but the electric fence was all over the top of the wall, and he couldn't find a place to step. I thought he would give up like this, but I didn't expect him to take out a pair of insulating gloves from his clothes, touching the edge of the electric fence bit by bit. I was thinking about whether to fire a warning shot, and one of his legs had already crossed the top of the wall, and the other leg was carefully receiving it inside the wall. Bang! The bullet grazed the man from country Y's leg and hit the trunk of a tree nearby. The man from country Y's face instantly sank, and the mistress was even more worried looking at him. I didn't dare to speak, but the warning was obvious. The man from country Y spoke a lot of words I couldn't understand, and finally, worried that I couldn't understand, he explained it again in English. The general meaning is that he didn't mean to disturb, but his girlfriend is pregnant, but he doesn't have food anymore, and he thought my house was unoccupied, and wanted to find something to eat. Looking at his affectionate appearance, if I hadn't seen him kill the old lady from country X and occupy her nest, I might have really believed him. Unfortunately, I know everything. Bang! I fired another shot. The rejection was obvious. The man from country Y cursed a word I couldn't understand, and reluctantly climbed out of the wall. This time, he accidentally touched the center of the electric fence, and even the insulating gloves couldn't protect him. He fell directly. His mistress ran over to comfort him, cursing at my house. Such a person, even if he didn't kill the old couple from country X, would never be grateful for others' kindness. I thought this matter would be temporarily over, but I didn't expect that before dawn, the man from country Y came again. This time, the man from country Y didn't climb the wall, nor did he plead again, and directly fired a shot at my window with a hunting rifle. I was startled by the gunshot. But to my surprise, my mother actually installed bulletproof glass, and the bullets from the man from country Y posed no threat to me. This is not an island villa, this is clearly my turtle shell, the ceiling of defense. The discovery of bulletproof glass made the man from country Y even more furious, and he fired several shots at my front door with his gun. A series of gunshots echoed across the island. I squinted, opened a small crack in the window, and raised my gun. My shooting is very poor, but I was very angry at his repeated provocations. Bang! The bullet flew out, carrying my anger, and firmly hit the man from country Y's arm. TSK. A little off. The man from country Y screamed, covering his arm, and turned to run. Run! You know to run now. Isn't it a bit late? Bang! I held the gun and fired another shot very seriously. This shot fell on his thigh. The bullet instantly deprived his leg of mobility, and he fell to the ground. At this moment, there were no more unpleasant and obscure swear words from his mouth. Fear enveloped him, just as it did with the old couple from country X. I saw him howling and begging for mercy to me, dragging the leg that was hard to support, crawling behind a tree. Bang! This shot whistled past his scalp. What a pity. He completely hid in the woods, and I had no chance to fire a fourth shot. Even if he had the intention, he probably no longer has the ability to covet my house. I slept soundly with the company of the German Shepherd, waking up at noon due to hunger. The anger subsided, and the fear that came later surged into my heart. The window that I had opened a crack, from which I could shoot out, could naturally also be shot into. And my terrible shooting skills. I have to say, I am really lucky. To reward myself for being so brave and to comfort my tender heart, I made an extremely rich lunch for myself. Mushroom and shrimp soup, boiled lettuce, stir-fried beef cubes, plus a bowl of rice. After rewarding myself, the German Shepherd, who played a significant role, naturally could not be left out. I directly opened a can of beef for him, a pack of beef liver, a tomato, plus a bowl of white rice. One person and one dog enjoyed their meal very much. On the 15th day of the zombie outbreak, something happened at Xiao Yang's house. Xiao Yang didn't explain the specific situation, and the usual mobile phone signal was already very poor. I could only hear a few intermittent words from her. Yi, my home is no longer safe. Can I hide at your place? I still had to face the problem that I had been trying to avoid. But you don't know which island I am on, and there are no boats that can come here now, and it's not safe on the road. I don't know if Xiao Yang heard what I was saying. I spoke to myself and was unwilling for them to come to me. The signal was lagging, and it finally hung up on its own. I sat by the window, looking at the blue sea not far away, and sighed gently. I don't know how much supplies my mother has prepared, nor do I know whether Xiao Yang's family will be unfavorable to me and my mother for supplies later, and I'm not sure if their arrival will bring the virus. Too many uncertainties make selfish and timid me unwilling to accept them. I don't know what Xiao Yang will think of me. I just hope that Xiao Yang could have bought enough supplies with the money I gave her. Due to the influence of the sea breeze and tides, yachts and ships are difficult to approach the island during the day, and it is only possible to enter the island at night, which is why I had to arrive at the island before dawn at that time. In order not to miss my mother's call, I have been keeping the wireless phone by my pillow these days, for fear of missing my mother's call to open the door. In my great expectation, the wireless phone rang, and the other end came my mother's tired but relaxed voice. "Daughter, open the door." The long-awaited voice instantly energized me. Ignoring the confused German Shepherd, I ran downstairs to open the door. My mother is still so heroic, standing at the door and smiling at me lightly, holding a zombie. I was terrified and retreated continuously. Wang! The German Shepherd didn't know when he came to my side, barking at my mother and the zombie behind her. "Shut up!" I quickly scolded him, turned to look at the zombie behind my mother. "Mom, this." My mother pulled the zombie like a puppet and helped me up. There are no zombies on the island. I caught one to study. I was stunned, and there was indeed an independent laboratory in the villa. I originally thought my mother wanted to do experiments at home, but I didn't expect it was used to raise zombies. My mother pulled the zombie into the yard and quickly closed the door. Wang! The German Shepherd has been baring his teeth at the zombie, but due to my instruction, he didn't bark very loudly. My mother squinted at the German Shepherd. When did my daughter start raising a dog? Picked it up. I looked at the zombie behind my mother with some fear. "Let's go inside first." Okay, my mother nodded slightly and followed me into the house. Because I have always been very afraid of that unresponsive zombie, my mother took the zombie directly to the laboratory after entering the house and locked it up. "Is there anything to eat?" "I'm starving." My mother took off her dirty coat and boots. "In the kitchen." "Make it for me." My mother raised her eyebrows at me, made a heart gesture at me, and turned to the bathroom. I resignedly went to the kitchen to cook a bowl of green vegetable and egg noodles for my mother, and also brought a glass of milk. When I finished cooking the noodles, my mother was wiping her short hair. "When did you cut your short hair?" In my impression, my mother always had long black hair, and it was rare to see her with such a heroic short hair. As soon as it happened, my mother wiped it casually, then threw the towel aside. "It was in the way." "Okay," I responded softly, "it looks good this way too." "This dog." My mother took a big bite of noodles, raising it for food. I gave my mother a look and drove the German Shepherd back to his utility room. "Mom, when will this virus end?" "Now outside." My mother shook her head. The situation in Country L is not optimistic now. There are no surviving states, and other countries are also falling one after another. This is also why I brought a zombie back to the lab. The research institute is completely unusable. I went there these days to get the experimental data of this virus from the institute and several colleagues, hoping to study something. I took a look at the direction of the laboratory, with a tangled face. Is this zombie going to be raised forever? Don't worry, it can't get out. My mother waved her hand. This thing can only be transmitted through saliva and blood. You won't mutate if you don't kiss it. Ooh. I think I was disgusted by my mother. You eat, I'm going up. Stop. My mother suddenly put down her chopsticks, pointed to the utility room. When are you going to kill it? I gave her a fierce look. Eat your noodles. That dog has been with me through thick and thin, don't touch it. TSK also through thick and thin, your mother is still risking her life for you. I waved my hand and went upstairs. In the following days, my mother has been in her laboratory all day, only coming out at meal times to order some dishes for me. As a result, I spent more time cooking at home, waking up in the morning to make a simple breakfast for my mother, then going back to sleep, waking up to make lunch. After lunch, I would train the German Shepherd for a while, observe the man from Country Y, and then it was time to make dinner. After staying in the laboratory for a week, my mother came out of the laboratory on the last day, looking defeated, and even when eating, she was absent-minded. I may need to go out again. Why? I was shocked by my mother's words. Where to? To find someone. What kind of person? What for? Are you sure he hasn't become a zombie? My mother, with her eyes full of dark circles, looked at me tiredly and gently rubbed my head. Don't worry, Mom has a sense of measure, and it's not that fast. I frowned, not satisfied with her answer. He is one of the participants in the virus research, and some issues are only clear to them. Because my mother previously disagreed with human experiments and was driven back by the research institute for a period of time, she did not follow up on the experiments and was not clear about the experimental situation. She went back later in order to understand more information, but the higher-ups were wary of her and did not let her participate in the following experiments. I have to determine his situation before making a decision. On the 25th day of the zombie outbreak, I received a call from Xiao Yang. In the current situation where the internet and electricity are cut off, even my contact with my mother is through a wireless phone. I don't know how Xiao Yang managed to make this call. Yi, I'm here, but I can't get over now. Can you help? Xiao Yang's words left me bewildered, and my mother sitting on the sofa looked at me in confusion. Xiao Yang, where are you? From the other end of the phone, there was a faint sound of the howling sea breeze, as well as the sound of a yacht engine. I'm outside the island where your house is. The wind and water are against us, and the fishing boat can't dock. Can you come and help? Xiao Yang's voice was already filled with a heavy cry and fatigue. I frowned. Where? Outside the island where my house is? Because of my mother's repeated instructions, I only vaguely mentioned to Xiao Yang that my mother bought a villa on an island, but I absolutely did not tell her the coordinates of the island. My questioning left Xiao Yang at a loss for an explanation, and her hesitant attitude made my heart even colder. Let me explain. It seemed that the phone was taken away by someone else on Xiao Yang's end. Zhongyi, hello, I am Xiao Yang's boyfriend. Hearing Xiao Yang's boyfriend's voice, my face became even more unsightly. Xiao Yang not only came to the island secretly but also brought her boyfriend. No wonder. Xiao Yang's boyfriend is a major in communication engineering, and it might be him who helped Xiao Yang contact me. You speak. Xiao Yang's family had an accident, and I heard that the place where you are now is very safe. Can you temporarily take us in? I looked at my mother, who was watching the excitement, and felt the anger burning. Friendship? You talk to me about friendship. Didn't I remind her when I knew something happened? I also transferred $1 million to her to prepare supplies. I've done enough, haven't I? My complaints and blame towards Xiao Yang completely erupted under the stimulation of her boyfriend. I won't let you come to my house if you have the ability to land. I don't care, but don't provoke me. Zhongyi, you can't be like this. The phone was snatched again, as if by Xiao Yang's mother. You used to be so close with Xiao Yang, and now you are unwilling to take us in for a while. I took a deep breath and tried to suppress my anger. Auntie, we don't have much supplies at home. When my mother prepared, it was based on the amount for 2 people. You came to the door without saying a word, and I don't even know how many people you have. If you have murderous intentions, wouldn't I be at your mercy? Zhongyi, what are you talking about? Xiao Yang's mother was so angry that she scolded. You used to be so close with Xiao Yang, and Xiao Yang gave you so many things, now you are ungrateful? Do you have any shame? What have I received? The most valuable thing Xiao Yang has given me is this watch. I suddenly realized how Xiao Yang found the location of the island. I didn't expect that her so-called birthday blessing was actually to monitor my location. I pulled off the watch from my wrist and smashed it on the ground. The watch immediately shattered. I still felt unsatisfied and stomped on it a few more times. Duan Yang, are you monitoring me? Xiao Yang's crying on the other end of the phone became louder. It's not like that, Xiao Yang's boyfriend explained for her. This watch has a built-in positioning system, not something Xiao Yang did. Xiao Yang's boyfriend's words also indirectly admitted that they indeed found me through this watch. Well, how did you know the location of the island? When we bought the watch, Xiao Yang tried it with her phone. I sneered heavily. Duan Yang, we are all sly foxes. Why are you playing tricks on me? Do you think I believe such nonsense? Yi Xiao Yang's voice returned to the phone. I don't have any bad intentions. I just want to go to your place to take refuge. My home was robbed, and my dad was injured. We really have nowhere to go. Enough talk. My mother snatched the phone from my hand and turned it off directly. You don't have to worry about it. I disagree. This house was bought by me, and the facilities were done by me. I won't let her live here. Install a positioning system in the watch. Duan Yang really opened our eyes. But one must always be on guard, so my mother put her experiments aside and spent the whole day upstairs, watching the sea with her high-powered telescope. Indeed, there was a shabby fishing boat not far from the horizon. Mom, I'm sorry. If it weren't for my trust in Duan Yang, no one would bring a dangerous hidden danger to our safe house. My mother gave me a look. I know you're not smart. Me. Without my help, Duan Yang's fishing boat could only stay not far from the coastline. As night fell, the direction of the sea breeze began to change, and the seawater also slowly rose. They slowly approached the shore. My mother gave me several looks, then sent me to the 3rd floor, claiming that out of sight, out of mind. My mother stayed on the 2nd floor, moved a chair to sit by the window, and placed several guns and bullets next to her, looking like she was guarding the mountains and rivers. I don't know why Duan Yang was determined to come to me, but I was really disappointed in her. If she just wanted a place to stay, any place on this island would be safe, but if she came to me with her family. I looked down from the 3rd floor window, and my mother had already set up her gun. So, what awaited her was inevitably my mother's bullets. In the end, they did make it ashore and still came towards my house. I watched them stumble ashore, step by step towards me. In addition to Duan Yang and her mother, there were her boyfriend and his parents, and finally, they dragged a human figure with a black bag. Duan Yang's boyfriend helped her walk towards my house, probably remembering my location before my watch was broken. I sighed deeply. Well, it's no longer up to me to decide. Bang! My mother didn't even bother to talk nonsense with them and directly fired a shot when Duan Yang approached a certain range. The bullet hit the grass one step in front of Duan Yang, successfully stopping her. I saw their horrified and astonished gazes. Yi Duan Yang's tears flowed before she could say anything. Can't you just take us in for a while? My mother didn't say a word either. All that responded to Duan Yang was silence and quiet. Seeing Duan Yang crying non-stop, her boyfriend seemed to be comforting her in a low voice, and her mother couldn't help but rush out at this moment. Zhongyi, come out. Explain yourself. What kind of thing are you doing? Why does Duan Yang's mother seem like I'm the scum who has wronged Duan Yang? How can one be so selfish? You and Xiao Yang have such a good relationship, why not take us in for a while? We won't occupy your house, we won't harm you. Why are you so cold-blooded? If the same thing happened to my Xiao Yang, she would definitely come to pick you up without you saying. Duan Yang's mother talked for a long time, either blaming me or advising me, with a condescending attitude. I guess my mother was getting tired of listening. When Duan Yang stood out, she stopped crying, looking at the direction of my house with a wronged and desperate look. Zhongyi, are you really unwilling to help? We are now out of options. I know you don't want me to come to the island to find you, and I know you must be very angry with me for monitoring you now, but I really have no bad intentions towards you. For so many years, the feelings between me and Duan Yang were not fake. She was always gentle and never asked me for anything. It was precisely because she never showed any signs that I trusted her so much and was willing to give her $1 million to save her life. But I didn't expect that my kindness was a ladder for her to take advantage of. I didn't speak, and I couldn't speak. Bang! The gunshot rang out again. But this time, it was not aimed at the grass under Duan Yang's feet, but the boyfriend of Duan Yang who was trying to sneak in from another direction. This person who said he had no bad intentions towards me turned around and let his boyfriend sneak in secretly, which is what she called having no bad intentions. My mother's shooting was very accurate, and Duan Yang's boyfriend was now shot in the chest and was dying on the ground. Duan Yang hurriedly took 2 steps forward, but she was afraid of my mother shooting at her and stopped in place. On the contrary, the parents of the boyfriend, who were originally timidly following at the end, rushed up at this moment. My mother fired another shot to deter them, but it didn't scare them. The couple who rushed to the side of the boyfriend's boyfriend disregarded the danger and dragged him all the way to the back of the tree, trying to find cover from my mother's bullets. My mother didn't want to pay attention to them at the moment, and the gun was still aimed at Duan Yang. And Duan Yang seemed to have realized that the person holding the gun was not me, hesitating whether to retreat first. Bang! Another shot. My mother seemed to play with the gun very smoothly. However, unexpectedly, my mother's shot was not aimed at Duan Yang, nor at her boyfriend's side, but Duan Yang's mother, who was guarding the black bag. When did Duan Yang's mother see such a scene? She was scared and screamed continuously at the same time. The black bag that was struggling slightly suddenly struggled more fiercely. Could it be that they also tied someone up? Before I could figure it out, my mother fired several shots, accurately breaking the hemp rope tied to the black bag. Without the restraint of the hemp rope, the thing in the black bag immediately broke free. However, the man in the black bag was still tied up and did not completely break free. I carefully looked at the man tied up with a telescope. It's Duan Yang's father. No, it's a zombie. I can't care about much anymore, and I quickly ran downstairs. Mom, that's a zombie. I know my mother still held the gun and stood by the window, her face cold. It's also Duan Yang's father. I didn't expect that Duan Yang's father had become a zombie. It seems that Duan Yang and Duan Yang's mother couldn't bear to leave him behind and brought him to the island for refuge. But this also means that the island is no longer a clean and safe island without zombies. Humph, in terms of selfishness, who can compare with them? My mother snorted coldly, aiming the gun at Duan Yang's father, ready to shoot him in the head. Perhaps Duan Yang also noticed my mother's intention and turned to shout at her mother to drag her dad away. My mother would not let them leave easily and fired several shots, one on Duan Yang's father's leg, one on his chest, one on his left shoulder, and one on Duan Yang's mother's lower back. Duan Yang's mother, who was hit by the gun, instantly lost her strength and fell to the ground. Duan Yang hurriedly ran forward to pull her. Duan Yang alone could not take away 2 people who had no mobility. I saw her look back at us, her eyes were complicated, and finally, she carried her mother and fled into the woods. Mom, what should we do? I looked at the struggling zombie Duan dad, feeling embarrassed. So far, the zombies I have come into contact with are just the one on the boat that day, and the one my mother brought back. I haven't even seen a second time. In my eyes, these zombies are like dogs with strong combat power and rabies, and I don't have the ability to subdue them. My mother threw the gun to me. You watch. Me. I was stunned. My shooting is terrible, what can I watch? Well, my mother nodded, changed into a set of leather clothes that are not easy to tear, and added a pair of leather gloves. We can't let it lie outside all the time, otherwise if it escapes, we will not have a peaceful day. But I wanted to say something but stopped. Then be careful. Well, my mother nodded, dressed up again and put a short gun in her pocket before going out. Right, you can't trust my shooting too much. My mother opened the door all the way and then carefully closed it behind her. I came to the window and carefully observed the situation around. My mother smoothly came to the side of the zombie Duan dad, and the zombie Duan dad roared desperately at my mother when he heard the footsteps. My mother is indeed my mother. A kick, directly hitting the zombie Duan dad's back neck, instantly knocking the zombie Duan dad down. But zombies are zombies after all. They have no perception and can't feel pain despite being hit in the neck. They still insist on raising their heads to bite my mother. My mother didn't bother with his insignificant struggle, carefully checked it, and made sure that the hemp rope tied to it was fine, then dragged the zombie doing dad back by the clothes on the back of his neck. I was just about to wait for her to get close to the door to pick her up when a thin but agile figure suddenly jumped out from the woods. It's Duan Yang. I didn't have time to think too much. I only knew that Duan Yang's appearance at this moment was definitely not a good thing. Bang! Bang! One shot hit Duan Yang's heart. One shot hit Duan Yang's forehead. I was still trembling as I held the gun, and Duan Yang had already lost her life and fallen to the ground. My mother and I exchanged a glance, and I saw her surprise in her eyes. I couldn't tell which shot was mine and which was my mother's, but in any case, they were fatal injuries. No one could survive being hit by either shot. I was surprised at my unexpectedly accurate shooting skills and was also terrified that I had killed a living person. But I knew I was not wrong. A few meters from my mother's feet, there was a sharp dagger lying on the ground, which had fallen from Duan Yang's hand. Duan Yang was good at throwing darts. I don't know if she was going to throw the dagger at my mother or try to kidnap my mother when she rushed out from the woods, but in any case, she had bad intentions. My mother dragged the zombie Duan dad back home and threw him into the laboratory, just like the zombie she had brought before. The arrival of the zombie Duan dad temporarily delayed my mother's plan to leave. I had another dream, a very strange dream. I dreamed that Duan Yang shed her usual gentle and quiet appearance, with blooded hands tightly gripping my neck and shaking me hard. Xiao Xiao Yang. Why? Why can't you take us in? Why don't you save us? Why did you kill me? The strong sense of suffocation made it impossible for me to speak, and it felt so real that it didn't seem like a dream. I struggled, my face turned red, and my hands and feet flailed around, like a dying fish. Bang, bang. In the chaos, there seemed to be 2 gunshots, and the force on my neck slowly released. Duan Yang's smooth forehead had a bullet hole, and a large amount of blood was seeping from her chest. I hurriedly pushed Duan Yang away, scrambled to hide on the side and looked around, but I didn't see anyone who had fired the gun. Duan Yang fell to the ground, continuously vomiting blood. I don't know why Duan Yang, who was shot in the brain, didn't die immediately. Duan Yang lay on the ground, her chest soaked in blood that stained the ground beneath her. Her usually bright eyes were staring at me, filled with resentment. Zhong Yi. I looked at her cautiously, not daring to approach. Zhong Yi. She shouted my name, crying it out with a heart-wrenching voice, even as blood gushed up and filled her mouth. What are you doing? I asked in fear and caution. Coward Duan Yang's voice was getting weaker, probably because she was running out of strength. Coward, how dare you? I was bewildered and didn't understand what Duan Yang meant. What do you mean, how dare I? Zhong Yi. Duan Yang didn't answer my question, but kept calling my name, her hatred so deep that I thought she wanted to swallow me alive. I curse you. I curse you to never be blessed. I curse you to die at the hands of zombies. I curse everyone you love to die in the underworld. Duan Yang's curse was vicious, leaving me confused and angry at the same time. Like your dad. In that moment, it felt like something in my mind snapped. A moment of blankness and a pause in my heartbeat. I stood up abruptly, staring at Duan Yang with the same fierce look, and kicked her chest hard. I'm not thin, and I'm not weak, so this kick sent Duan Yang sliding backward a couple of meters. My dad, who had promised to be my support for a lifetime, died in a car accident while protecting me. I only told Duan Yang about this once. Now, it has become a sharp thorn in her mouth to hurt me. Duan Yang is indeed Duan Yang. She is ruthless and venomous. My kick was not a fatal injury to Duan Yang, but it marked the end of her life. Duan Yang coughed up blood in large amounts, until she couldn't even cough up blood anymore. She lay on the ground, completely out of breath. I sat on the ground, feeling a mix of emotions, and tears finally couldn't help but flow out. I opened my eyes, wiped my face, and found it full of cold tears. It was still very dark outside, and I looked at the alarm clock beside me by the moonlight. 3:26. I wiped the tears from my face, got out of bed, and walked over. The light in the laboratory was still on, and my mother was still busy inside. I walked over slowly, knocked on the door gently, and looked inside through the glass. My mother, wearing a thick protective suit, looked back at me in surprise for a moment, then pressed the button to open the door. Why are you here? My mother couldn't put down her work for a while. Wait a moment, I'll be done soon. No rush. I shook my head, not interested in the bottles and jars in my mother's hand, and looked towards a room further inside, where two zombies lay quietly on the experimental bed, their hands and feet tied. This was the first time I observed zombies so calmly and carefully. My mother also noticed my actions. Oh, not afraid anymore? I didn't respond, and for the first time, I asked about my mother's experiment. Mom, can the virus be completely eliminated? My mother was stunned for a moment, and after finishing her work, she looked at me again. No. A firm and decisive answer, with no room for negotiation. I looked at the experimental bottle in my mother's hand. Then what is this for? Vaccine. I was stunned, looking at my mother in shock. Substandard product. My mother sighed. Even with all the surviving experimental data, I still can't make a perfect vaccine. Can it be used? No. My mother shook her head. What's missing? The main person in charge of the experiment, that is the person my mother wants to bring here. Where is he? Hasn't he been infected by the virus? There are not many survivors in Country L. My mother shook her head. He was prepared long ago, and as soon as the virus leaked, he ran away. Then do you know where he is? I know. My mother showed a sly smile. I got it out of him after getting him drunk. I was silent for a moment, then turned to look at the two zombies lying quietly in the laboratory. Then you go. My mother was stunned. The sooner you go, the sooner you come back. I am a selfish person, so I didn't save the old lady from Country X who asked for help. I am a selfish person, so I would rather give Du and Yang $1 million than let her come to me. I am a selfish person, so I would shoot Du and Yang when she wanted to hurt my mother. I am a selfish person. But I can't be selfish enough to extinguish the world's hope. The outside world is in chaos, more and more places are falling, and more people are losing their relatives and friends. Compared to them, I have a lot. I raised a bright smile to my mother. I believe you will come back safely. The smile was bright, with tears in my eyes. My mother didn't say anything, just patted me on the head. The next afternoon, my mother left on the yacht she came with. I stood by the window, watching my mother gradually disappear from my sight as she rode the waves on the yacht. The following days were calm, with nothing happening. The German Shepherd accompanied me every day, eating and drinking, occasionally exercising in the gym. Without my mother around, the German Shepherd seemed to have more fun with me. However, how could the end of the world have truly peaceful days? On the other side of the island, a huge explosion occurred. The dazzling fire, thick black smoke, and intermittent gunfire all indicated that the island was no longer peaceful. About half an hour later, the gunfire got closer and closer. They were coming this way. As far as I know, there are only 6 houses on this island that are actually built and inhabited, and the others are either not built or not started. I have the elderly couple from Country X and the man from Country Y here, and there are 3 on the other side among them. The largest villa belongs to Mr. Rick, the owner of the island if I am not mistaken. The person who got off the helicopter is Mr. Rick. I was observing with a telescope at all times, and the German Shepherd was guarding me. Soon, several ragged figures emerged from the woods. One of them was dressed in a suit, running towards the villa of the elderly couple from Country X, where the man from Country Y and his mistress were living, with the help of 2 mercenaries. They seemed to knock on the door urgently, and the mistress opened the door in confusion, and they rushed in, and the mistress couldn't stop them. They seemed to explain to the mistress, or maybe they didn't. In any case, after locking the door quickly, they all rushed into the villa. At the same time, 2 figures emerged from the bushes, desperately knocking on the door. I took a closer look with the telescope and found that these 2 people were the parents of the boyfriend of Du and Yang. No, they can no longer be called people. They are 2 zombies. In addition to the zombie Du and Dad, did they bring other zombies ashore? Or did the 2 zombies in the laboratory escape? I hurried downstairs and saw that the door of the laboratory was still closed, and the 2 zombies were still lying quietly on the experimental bed. So why did they become zombies? Where did the boyfriend of Du and Yang go? The doubts filled my mind, but now is not a good time to seek answers. I continued to observe their movements back in the room. The 2 zombies both had traces of being burned, with clothes hanging in tatters on their bodies, desperately hitting the door. The villas on the island are quite sturdy, and the two zombies couldn't break the door. But I don't think this matter will end like this. Zombies have no consciousness, and after hitting the door for a while without hearing any sound, they stopped hitting the door. But because there were no other sounds elsewhere, they kept wandering around that area. After about 2 or 3 days, it seemed that there was a dispute on the other side, and the zombies started hitting the door again. It's been 42 days since the outbreak of the zombie virus, and the food in the house of the elderly couple from Country X should be almost gone, not to mention the group of Mr. Rick. The food distribution should have caused a dispute. After discovering that the zombies started hitting the door again, they fell silent once more. This time, the door was hit by the zombies and was on the verge of collapse. If they didn't think of a solution, they would likely become food for the zombies. In the end, Mr. Rick, who was accompanied by mercenaries, made a decision. If I am not mistaken, they are coming to me. But I don't think Mr. Rick's team is very optimistic. Mr. Rick now only has 2 mercenaries, but he also has his 2 children and his wife. The villa of the elderly couple from Country X is not close to me, and there is a risk of being discovered on the road at any time. Of course, Mr. Rick definitely won't take the injured and unhealed man from Country Y and his mistress. I was ready and waiting for a good show. They didn't know where to get a ladder, and one of the mercenaries climbed over the wall away from the door first, then Mr. Rick's family, and finally another mercenary was the last. From beginning to end, I didn't see the man from Country Y and his mistress. I guess they might have been killed by Mr. Rick due to the unfair distribution, or they might have been abandoned by Mr. Rick. I thought they would come to my direction next, but I saw from the telescope that the last mercenary threw something into the yard. Boom! The huge explosion startled me and excited the zombies outside the door even more. I immediately overthrew my previous judgment. The man from Country Y and his mistress should not have been killed. Instead, they were left as bait to attract and hold back the zombies. It is indeed a tycoon who can do business to buy an island, and the means are ruthless and decisive. Under the cover of the explosion, they then ran towards my direction. The 2 zombies quickly broke open the door that was on the verge of collapse and rushed into the house. I took out the machine gun left by my mother, set it up at the window like her, and tried to only open a small crack. I believe they will not come over rashly, like the man from Country Y, to be deterred. 100 meters. 50 meters. 20 meters. 5 meters. Bang! As soon as they stepped into the range of the machine gun, I fired and hit the right shoulder of the mercenary in the front. They cursed and slowed down, no longer rushing forward, but each looking for cover. Mr. Rick took off his hat and waved to my side, walking towards me step by step. "Ms. Leah, is that you?" Mr. Rick looked like he was trying to get close. Leah is my mother's name in Country L. I didn't say a word. "Dear Ms. Leah, please forgive our sudden visit. May I ask if we can temporarily take shelter from the zombies at your house? My wife and 2 children have been hungry for several days." Bang! I fired a shot in front of Mr. Rick. I refused. I can even refuse Du and Yang, let alone them. Mr. Rick's face was a bit ugly, and he continued to plead earnestly, "Dear Ms. Leah, I know you are a kind person, and you are also worried that we may bring you the virus or harm. It doesn't matter, my 2 mercenaries and I won't go in, just let my wife and 2 children go in, okay?" A woman and 2 children, it sounds like it really doesn't pose much of a threat. But I still refuse. It is the most ridiculous thing to stake one's life on someone else's character. Mr. Rick kept pleading earnestly, and I vaguely couldn't hear every word he said. I looked at his wife and 2 children behind him, and they did look harmless. "Ms. Leah, please, let my child have a chance to live." Seeing that I was still not giving in, Mr. Rick was so anxious that he was about to kneel down to me. Unfortunately, I can't stand this kind of moral kidnapping the most. I impatiently turned my head away and suddenly noticed that one of the mercenaries guarding them was missing. I immediately felt alarmed and finally found that mercenary near the corner of the downstairs wall. He was holding a climbing rope with a hook, preparing to throw this hook to catch the roof or eaves, so as to climb in by force. They must have already learned from the man from Country Y that the walls of my house are electrified, so they didn't plan to enter through the main gate. On one side, Mr. Rick was trying to attract my attention with moral kidnapping, while on the other side, he was secretly doing this kind of thing. I snorted coldly, turned the gun, and aimed at the mercenary downstairs and fired a shot. Because the distance was very close and I aimed accurately, I hit his head with one shot. The climbing rope with a hook fell down with him. Bang! The bullet grazed my right cheek, leaving a bloodstain. I looked up in shock at the mercenary I had shot first. His face was fierce, his right arm was hanging down, and he was holding a gun with his left hand. Death was very close to me, but at this moment, my mind was completely frozen, losing all its sharpness and emotions, but falling into a strange calmness. I pulled back the gun and decisively closed the window. The mercenary could accurately shoot bullets from the small gap I had opened, and naturally, he could also have the second and third shots. Anyway, life is the most important, and if it doesn't work, retreat to the basement. After closing the window, I looked coldly at Mr. Rick, and behind them, 2 zombies that heard the movement were running towards them. Mr. Rick and his group naturally also knew the urgency of time, with the injured mercenary guarding my side, and their family quickly running towards my house. Their hands seemed to be wearing insulating materials, stepping on each other to jump into the yard. Mr. Rick caught his children one by one, the last one was his wife, and the injured mercenary stepped up. I seized the opportunity and opened the window decisively when Mr. Rick's wife stepped on the mercenary's shoulder, raising the short gun. Bang! Hit the neck. Blood kept gushing out from the neck, and Mr. Rick's wife fell down directly, pressing the mercenary. I looked at the anxious Mr. Rick and closed the window again. Mr. Rick was unwilling to give up his wife and was anxious to open the yard door, but this door can only be opened with the fingerprints of me and my mother. He roared and was angry, and his 2 children also followed him to smash the door. Suddenly, I heard a mechanical sound in the house, and countless sharp bamboo sticks suddenly shot out in the yard, causing minor injuries but very intimidating. Mr. Rick and his children couldn't dodge in time and were pricked by several, crying in pain. The bamboo sticks stopped quickly, but the grass in the yard suddenly collapsed, leaving only a few plum blossom piles, leading to the direction of the home, and the plum blossom piles were covered with sharp thorns. Mr. Rick was completely stunned. So was I. I really didn't expect that when my mother built this villa, she thought so comprehensively. It's not only to prevent zombies but also to prevent people. Outside the yard, zombies are getting closer, and Mr. Rick's wife is crying and beating the door, even trying to climb in from the side of the wall. The zombies are getting closer step by step. Mr. Rick can't see it, but listening to his wife's crying, he is also very anxious, regardless of his own injury, desperately kneeling and kowtowing to me, just hoping I can let his wife in to take refuge. This time is much more sincere than just now. Unfortunately, the door opening authority is not in the villa, and it can only be opened by manually inputting fingerprints in the yard, and I can't save a stranger even if I sympathize with them. Bang, bang, bang. A series of gunshots suddenly rang out, which is more attractive to zombies than Mr. Rick's wife's crying. I looked at the direction of the gunshot, and my mother didn't know where she got a long knife, like a tang knife, standing still waiting for the zombies to rush over. Behind my mother stood a man in a black overcoat with gold-rimmed glasses, holding a suitcase in his hand. This man in glasses should be the person in charge of the experiment that my mother came to find. My mother is indeed my mother. A tang knife is so sharp that the knife wind is shaking. I was wondering why my mother didn't just shoot the zombie in the head when a zombie had already rushed to my mother. My mother took a step forward and met her head on, and when the zombie pounced towards her with an open face, she raised her hand and chopped the zombie's neck fiercely. The tang knife was so sharp that I doubted that my mother was cutting a watermelon. The zombie's body and head separated, and he fell to the ground. Another zombie pounced at my mother at this moment. My mother couldn't dodge in time, so she simply squatted down, perfectly dodging the zombie's pounce. The zombie didn't pounce on my mother, stopped, turned around, and roared again, rushing towards my mother. My mother was not ambiguous, turned sideways, and at the same time as passing by the zombie, she chopped the zombie's hands fiercely. 2 hands with black liquid flowed down, but the zombie still pounced towards my mother, trying to bite. My mother seemed to say something to the man in glasses, and the man in glasses quickly took out a hemp rope from my mother's backpack. My mother took a few turns and finally got the hemp rope from the man in glasses, wrapped it around the armless zombie a few times, and successfully tied it up. This is the first time I have seen how to deal with zombies, and it is also the first time I have a clear understanding of my mother's skills. My mother pulled the zombie that had been trying to pounce on her and simply tied its legs, dragging it to this side. Mr. Rick's wife was completely exhausted and fell by the door, her face full of fear and tears. "Hey, dear Modini, why are you at my door?" Mr. Rick's wife looked at my mother with tears, seemingly wanting to grab my mother's clothes, but in the end, she was still afraid of the zombie my mother was dragging behind her and just shook her head. My mother opened the door with her fingerprint and saw Mr. Rick, who was injured all over, and was shocked. "Wow. Mr. Rick, why are you in my house?" Mr. Rick caught his wife, who was weak in the legs, and was a bit embarrassed in the face of my mother's question, but he still found another topic. "Ms. Leah, are you not at home? Then who is in your house? Is your house occupied by someone?" My mother shook her head. "No, Mr. Rick, the one in my house is my daughter. I am not at home, and she stayed at home alone." Mr. Rick was stunned and smiled awkwardly. "So it is. Mr. Rick, you haven't told me why you are in my house yet." My mother asked this question very seriously. In Country L, it is a very serious illegal act to break into someone else's house. Mr. Rick's face was filled with an awkward attempt to ingratiate himself, and he reluctantly explained his intention to seek refuge and the process of how he entered the yard. The more my mother listened, the more her brows furrowed. "Mr. Rick, your actions, I'm afraid you've scared my daughter. Moreover, to be frank, I cannot take you in. The supplies in my house are not enough, only enough for my daughter and me to consume daily. Now with an additional person, I'm afraid I can't help you." The man in glasses clearly understood what my mother said and awkwardly pushed his glasses behind him. Mr. Rick couldn't compromise so easily. He was a seasoned tycoon, and bargaining was his forte. His children were crying loudly, which made my head ache. In the end, my mother chose to take a step back and agreed to take some food and daily necessities from the house to give to him, but she absolutely would not take them in. Mr. Rick also knew that my mother would not budge any further, and seeing the tang knife in my mother's hand, he could only nod in agreement. My mother stepped on the plum blossom piles and brought the man in glasses into the house. "Mom," I took the backpack from my mother's hand and looked at the zombies and Mr. Rick's family who couldn't come over. "What happened to you?" My mother noticed the injury on my face at a glance. "Wang wang wang, wang wang." Before I could answer, the German Shepherd rushed out and barked at the zombies outside the house. Well, and the newly arrived man in glasses. "Shut up." I scolded the German Shepherd all the way, and he meekly barked, then humbly turned and shrank into the corner. I then looked at my mother. "I'm fine, I was just confronted with them and was shot at by a mercenary, but I wasn't hit." My mother touched the bloodstain on my face, her face full of distress. "Did you shoot the 2 mercenaries outside?" "Millimeter," I nodded. "My shooting is average." My mother patted my head, her eyes faintly glistening with tears, but she restrained herself. "This is Professor Yu, you can call him Uncle Yu." I turned to look at the man in glasses and nodded slightly. "Uncle Yu." The man in glasses hurriedly hummed in agreement, looking a bit at a loss. My mother glanced at Mr. Rick's family, somewhat discontentedly took a large bag of supplies from the storeroom, and also brought a bag of flour for them. These things are enough for their family to live comfortably for a long time. "Mr. Rick, I hope you won't disturb me and my daughter again. If there is a next time, I won't be as kind-hearted as my daughter." My mother's words were full of anger, completely different from her previous attitude. Mr. Rick took the supplies and nodded heavily. After their family left, my mother closed the door again and pressed an unknown switch, and the lawn returned to its original state. "You've suffered." My mother's eyes were full of distress. "It's okay, Mom is back, and you don't have to worry about these things anymore." A sense of grievance suddenly welled up in my heart, and tears welled up in the corners of my eyes. "So, where should I put this?" The man in glasses awkwardly pulled his suitcase, looking at my mother nervously. My mother glared at him and casually pointed to the laboratory. "That's the laboratory, you can live in the laboratory or any room on the first floor. The second floor is for me and my daughter." The man in glasses nodded and turned to find his room. In fact, there is only a laboratory and a room for storing miscellaneous items on the first floor. "Well, let me take care of your wound." My mother took out the first aid kit, took out the alcohol, and wiped the wound on my face bit by bit. "Mom, can he develop a vaccine?" The man in glasses was too young, looking only in his 30s, which made me doubt his professional ability. My mother nodded. He is very introverted, but he has plans in his heart. It took me a lot of effort to find him this time with him. The vaccine won't take long. That's good. I breathed a sigh of relief. My mother carefully took care of my wound and then sent me upstairs to rest, even boasting that she would cook in the evening. But my mother's cooking skills, she dared to cook, I might not dare to eat. In the following days, my mother and the man in glasses were studying the vaccine for the zombie virus in the laboratory, and they only came out when I called them for meals after preparing the food. My mother didn't tell me the specific progress of the experiment, but I could see from their expressions and conversations that my mother was really happy. The arrival of the man in glasses indeed made great progress in the experiment, which made me feel that the success of the experiment was imminent. Time passed day by day, and the outside world was still chaotic, with some countries even taking out their bottom-of-the-box weapons. But the zombie virus is not so easy to eliminate. Where there are people, there may be the zombie virus. As long as there is one zombie in 10,000 people, then those 10,000 people will become zombies. Instead, the world has become full of holes and ruins. Bang, bang, bang. While cooking, I heard the struggling sound of the zombies from the laboratory again. I have been used to the sound of the shackles hitting the experimental bed for a period of time. My mother and the man in glasses have conducted countless experiments on those 3 unfortunate zombies, and I suspect that the zombies are about to mutate again because of them. But this time, I didn't hear the end of the beating sound even after I finished cooking. After I put the food on the table, as usual, I knocked on the laboratory door and looked in from the glass on the door. I saw my mother and the man in glasses standing in front of the struggling zombie, seemingly talking about something, and the zombie also reacted differently from the usual, not struggling in anger, but beating as if suffering. I knocked on the door hard, indicating that it was time for my mother and the man in glasses to eat. Because they still had to take off their protective suits and disinfect, I didn't bother to wait for them. I added the dog food I made for the German Shepherd into the bowl and sat down at the table to eat by myself. When I was almost full, my mother and the man in glasses came out, their faces more joyful and relaxed than ever before. Daughter, if there are no accidents, our vaccine will be developed soon. My mother happily held my hand that was still holding chopsticks. I was stunned, then looked at the man in glasses. The man in glasses pushed his glasses. As long as we adjust a little, it can be put into use. That's not bad, I nodded, pointing to the dishes I made today. Try it. I made sweet and sour pork ribs, blanched rapeseed, and seaweed egg soup today, and the taste is good. I don't understand their research, I only know that the development of the vaccine is a good thing, and eating is also very important. My mother and the man in glasses quickly sat down, each sharing their joy, eating 2 more bowls of rice, almost finishing the white rice I left for the German Shepherd. The experiment went smoothly, and one morning my mother knocked on my door. Daughter, I've contacted the motherland due to strict control. There are many people in the motherland who have not been infected with the zombie virus, and the vaccine can play the maximum role. Professor, you and I plan to send the vaccine there first. Do you want to go with us? Or stay here and leave after everything is completely calm? I was still sleepy and looked out the window at the clear sky. Mom, I don't want to go. I can't do anything, and I won't be of any use there. I won't be a burden to you. I'll wait for you to come back here. My mother touched my messy hair. Daughter, you are not a burden. I'm sorry. I have to break my promise again. I said I would accompany you and protect you before. It's okay. I shook my head. I found that your defense system here is really strong. As long as there are no accidents, this island is still safe. Okay, my mother nodded with tears in her eyes. If you have anything, contact me with the satellite phone. If you really can't, hide in the basement first and wait for me. I know, old lady. I teased my mother's sentimentality, but there were also tears in my eyes. After my mother left the room, I was no longer sleepy, sitting on the bed and staring blankly out the window. Today is the 115th day of the zombie outbreak. Unconsciously, it has been so long. My mother and the man in glasses, as the great contributors to the development of the virus vaccine, were taken away by a plane sent by the motherland. The day before they left, my mother wrote a letter and let the German Shepherd take the letter to find Mr. Rick's family. After not being able to stay in my house, Mr. Rick's family went to the man from Country Y's house, relying on my mother's relief and catching seafood by the sea, and luckily survived. The German Shepherd found Mr. Rick's family with its sensitive nose. That day, Mr. Rick's family appeared at the agreed location as instructed in the letter. At this moment, their clothes were ragged and couldn't see any appearance of a big tycoon. I asked my mother why she wanted to take them away. There was a sly and dark smile on the corner of my mother's mouth. Mr. Rick, who has been a capitalist for a lifetime and exploited others for a lifetime, should be exploited by others for the rest of his life. Although Mr. Rick is not kind-hearted, his business talent is indeed admirable. Now that the zombie virus is harming the world, after the vaccine is sent to the people, everything is in ruins, and the construction of the motherland is urgent. Taking Mr. Rick to the motherland is, of course, to exploit his business value. But this is just the reason on the surface, and I still think my mother is retaliating against Mr. Rick for bullying me when she was not there. However, this is not entirely bad for Mr. Rick's family. Now the safest country is our motherland. It is better to have a place where you can live without worries about food and clothing, rather than staying on the island with ragged clothes and insufficient food. The world is bustling for profit. Mr. Rick should be grateful that he still has value to be exploited, otherwise, with my mother's temperament, she would only add insult to injury. Mr. Rick's family was grateful to my mother, wanting to hug her and call her mom, which made me laugh. Finally, they all left on the plane of the motherland. On the 120th day of the zombie outbreak, the motherland announced to the world that it had developed a vaccine for the zombie virus and began to promote it nationwide. On the 130th day of the zombie outbreak, the promotion of the zombie vaccine was effective, and most people would no longer be attacked by zombies. The vaccine's effective rate reached 70%. Governments of various countries began to buy vaccines from the motherland, but due to the insufficient supply of vaccines in the motherland, not many vaccines were sold in the end. They decided to follow the spirit of humanitarianism and publicly disclose the vaccine development method in the form of a patent. The world is slowly returning to calm. Country L originally wanted to shift the blame to the motherland, proposing what is called the motherland threat theory, which is ridiculous and absurd. My mother and the man in glasses directly posted the work permit of the National Research Institute of Country L, slapping them in the face. Country L is the most severely affected country this time. Without a doubt now it can only stop stirring up trouble and focus on sorting out people's livelihoods. My German Shepherd and I continue to live a peaceful and lonely life on the island. My mother always has people send things to me, and I can go out after being vaccinated. I have tried to find Duanyang's body and her boyfriend, but I didn't find them. I only found a headless zombie body in the woods not far from my house, which should be Duanyang's mother. It may have been bitten while guarding Duanyang's father, but I don't know who beheaded it. On the 342nd day of the zombie outbreak, the world returned to calm, almost all survivors were vaccinated, and various countries finally had the energy to encircle and attack the zombies. My mother took me and my German Shepherd from the island on a sunny day. Returning to the motherland that I haven't been to for many years, looking at the familiar oriental faces, my long-term loneliness seemed to be comforted.